Have you ever seen a child carry the weight of truth on his shoulders, knowing no one would believe him, but still choosing to speak? It was a quiet morning in Belmore Hills where sunlight poured gently through the lace curtains of the old Foster house, warming everything it touched. Birds sang outside as if the world itself was untouched by cruelty. But inside the home of 9-year-old Noah Mercer, something unspoken pressed against the walls, thick and invisible like humidity before a storm. Noah wasn't like other boys his age. He didn't run with scraped knees and wild laughter. He walked softly, watched everything, and listened more than he spoke. People often mistook that silence for shyness. But inside Noah's heart was a roaring sea. He just hadn't found the shore to stand on yet. And perhaps that's why he noticed the things no one else did. If this story touches something deep inside you, if it reminds you of the power of speaking up when silence is safer, then please let your heart guide your hand, like, comment, and subscribe to keep these stories alive. Now let me take you back to the beginning. It started 3 months ago on the third Sunday after the new woman moved in. Her name was Marla Dennings. She had a voice like polished wood, smooth and low, with a kind of manufactured warmth that made adults lean in. Noah's father, Elliot Mercer, had met her at a charity fundraiser for the hospital's children's wing. 1 week later, she was at their dinner table, smiling too much and laughing at things that weren't funny. Elliot, a pediatric surgeon who hadn't smiled much since Noah's mother died, suddenly lit up around her like a boy in love. But Noah, he knew something wasn't right. It wasn't just the way Marla's smile tightened when Elliot wasn't looking, or how she never called Noah by his name, only kiddo, like he was an afterthought. It was the way her eyes shifted when no one watched, like she was scanning the room for something more valuable. One night, Noah caught her in the hallway standing in front of his mother's old photo, the one in the antique silver frame with a crack in the corner. Marla was staring at it with a strange look, not of sadness, but of calculation. And then she whispered, "Won't be needing this much longer." The next morning, the frame was gone. Noah asked his father where it went. Elliot only said Marla was redecorating. That night, Noah cried into his pillow, clutching his late mother's old sweater like it was a life raft. He didn't have the words yet, but he felt it in his bones. Something dark had crept into their home. In the weeks that followed, Marla became more and more embedded in their lives. She joined Elliot on hospital charity boards, showed up at school events pretending to be interested in Noah's spelling bees, and began referring to the house as our home. Noah watched it happen piece by piece. His father stopped cooking dinner. Marla ordered expensive takeout. His dad stopped reading with him at night. Marla said he needed to grow up. And when she thought no one was listening, she spoke into her phone in clipped tones. "He trusts me. No prenup. The life insurance is still in place. All we need is the ceremony." The words struck Noah like a slap. He began writing everything down, every word she said, every receipt she tried to hide, every strange man who visited while Elliot was on call at the hospital. He didn't know what to do with the truth, only that he had to protect his father. But who would believe him? A grieving boy against a woman the entire neighborhood adored. 2 weeks before the wedding, Noah made one last attempt. He stayed up late, heart pounding, and waited until Elliot came home. His father looked exhausted, collar loose, eyes sunken, still holding his briefcase. "Dad," Noah whispered, "can we talk?" Elliot gave a weary smile. "Of course, buddy. What's on your mind?" Noah took out the small notebook from his pillowcase. "I think Marla's hiding something. She's not who she says she is. I heard her. She's talking about your insurance," and Elliot raised his hand gently but firmly. "Noah," he exhaled, "I know this has been hard, but Marla's not replacing your mom. She's just trying to help us move forward. Can you try for me?" Noah's mouth went dry, but Elliot stood. "I love you, son, and I promise everything is going to be okay." But everything wasn't okay, and Noah knew he only had one chance left. The morning of the wedding arrived like a quiet thief. The Mercer home was filled with fresh roses, expensive suits, and a white dress that hung like a warning. Noah stood at the foot of the staircase in his little gray tuxedo, fists clenched at his sides. He had memorized every detail of what he planned to say. He had gone over it again and again in the mirror. Because when the moment came when the officiant said the words, "If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined," Noah knew he would have to rise and say what no one else dared, even if it meant losing everything. The chapel was silent. Sacred light streamed in through the stained glass windows, painting soft reds and golds across the wooden pews. Guests shifted in their seats, fanning themselves with printed programs. The air smelled of lilies and freshly waxed floors. It was the kind of silence that wrapped itself around you, not warm like a hug, but heavy like a held breath. Elliot stood at the altar in a dark navy suit, every line on his face softened by the rare expression of joy. His eyes were fixed on the double doors at the end of the aisle, waiting for them to open and reveal his bride. Marla was late by 5 minutes. Then 7, then the music began. The organ hummed to life with the first chords of the wedding march. And there she was, Marla Dennings, glowing in ivory silk in a veil that shimmered like deception. Her lips curved into that poised smile she wore like armor. Every step she took down the aisle brought her closer to what she had planned for months. Noah stood quietly at the side of the altar, the small velvet ring box in his trembling hands. He could feel the eyes of the room pulling him in every direction. But all he looked at was Marla, and her eyes which never even glanced at him. She was already thinking ahead. Past the ceremony, past the signatures, toward the money, and Noah knew it was now or never. The officiant cleared his throat and began. His words tumbled like waves, formal and grand. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. Noah's heartbeat was deafening. He could feel the notebook pressed against his side, tucked into the inner pocket of his little tuxedo jacket. He had written everything: transcripts, names, dates. The strange man who came to the house late at night and left with an envelope. The overheard phone calls. The document he saw on Marla's laptop labeled post-marriage disbursement plan. Noah knew if he didn't say it now, there'd be no second chance. The officiant paused for breath. If any person here can show just cause why these two should not be joined in matrimony. Noah stepped forward. His voice came out small, almost like a whisper at first. Stop. The room froze. Gasps rippled through the crowd like cracks in glass. Elliot turned toward him, eyebrows furrowed. Noah, I can't let you marry her. Noah said louder, clearer. Dad, she's lying to you. She's not who she says she is. Marla's face stiffened, but she didn't speak yet. Elliot gave a small, nervous laugh. Noah, this isn't the time for... I heard her dad. Noah turned to the crowd. All of you, I heard her say she had a life insurance plan on my dad. She's been talking to a man behind his back. She said 2 weeks after the wedding, she'd be done. A wave of shock washed over the room. Marla stepped forward slowly, one hand over her chest. Sweetheart, she said with sugary concern, I know weddings can be hard for children who've lost a mother. You're confused. This is just grief talking. But Noah didn't flinch. He pulled the notebook from his jacket and held it up. It's all in here. What she said, when she said it, she's not just pretending to love him, she's planning to hurt him. Maybe even kill him. Now Elliot's face had gone pale. He looked from Marla to Noah, his hands trembling. Marla, tell me this isn't true. Marla's smile fractured the corner of her lips, twitching. You're going to believe a child over me, Elliot. He's grieving. He's jealous. You know how children can be. Answer the question, Elliot said quietly. A beat of silence. Then another. And then something shifted. Marla's entire posture changed, her shoulders rolling back as if she dropped a mask she no longer needed. Her voice dropped its sweetness. Do you think a woman like me wanted to spend her life playing house with a broken man and his little ghost of a son? Elliot staggered back a step. The guest sat motionless, stunned. You were an easy target, she hissed. Lonely, soft, too guilt-ridden to see straight. I was going to make both our lives better. But your son... She shot Noah a venomous glare, couldn't keep his nose out of it. You were going to hurt me, Elliot said almost to himself. You really were. Marla's eyes narrowed. And now I can't. Thanks to your little spa. She turned on her heel, trying to leave, but 2 security guards stationed for ceremonial formalities stepped forward instinctively. She froze. Elliot fumbled for his phone. Noah, he said, his voice thick, call the police. The moment the call was placed, everything moved like water over stone. Officers arrived within minutes. Marla was escorted out, still muttering curses under her breath. Reporters caught wind before the hour was out. The guests, unsure whether to stay or flee, quietly dispersed. Noah stood beside his father, heart pounding, with something more than fear, something like relief. Elliot knelt down eye to eye with his son. I didn't see it, he whispered. You did. Noah didn't answer right away. His voice was tired when he finally spoke. I just wanted to keep you safe. Elliot pulled him close, holding him tight. You did. You saved me. Outside, as the police cars disappeared down the hill, Elliot and Noah stood on the chapel steps alone. The wind tugged gently at their clothes. The sky, now cloudy, hinted at rain, but neither of them moved. They didn't need to. For the first time in a long time, the storm had passed. And though their world would never be the same again, they had each other. And they had the truth. The days after the wedding that wasn't passed in a blur, quiet gray, and stretched thin by the weight of what had been exposed. The house, once busy with wedding planners, florists, and tastings, now echoed with nothing but footsteps and the low hum of the refrigerator. The silence wasn't peace. It was pause, a breath held a wound untouched. Elliot sat on the edge of his bed most mornings, still in pajamas at noon, staring at the wrinkled remnants of a tuxedo crumpled in the laundry hamper. He hadn't had the heart to take it to the cleaners. He didn't speak much. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know how to explain to an 8-year-old that he almost married a woman who saw them as disposable. Noah, for his part, carried a strange maturity in the way he moved. He didn't bounce into rooms anymore. He didn't leave Lego bricks in the hallway. He spent more time reading, drawing quietly at the kitchen table, or watching the way sunlight hit the window panes. But Elliot noticed the small things. The way his son jumped at sudden sounds. How he checked the locks twice before going to bed. How he always watched Elliot's back as if danger might return, and this time he wouldn't be fast enough. One evening after microwaving leftovers, they both barely touched. Elliot finally spoke. Noah, he said, his voice gentle. Do you ever think about your mom? At times like this, Noah looked up from his untouched peas. Sometimes. I do too, Elliot said, staring at his plate. I think about how she'd be proud of you. About how she'd probably say something wise that I can't seem to figure out right now. Noah didn't answer at first, but then he said softly, she used to tell me that if something feels wrong in your heart, it probably is. Elliot felt a lump in his throat. That sounds like her. The silence between them was different now, less hollow, more shared. That night, Elliot stood outside Noah's door for a long time after tucking him in. He watched the slow rise and fall of his son's chest under the blankets. Then he whispered mostly to himself, thank you for saving me, buddy. The next morning, Elliot opened his laptop and logged into a folder he had ignored for weeks. Wedding plans. He didn't open the files. He deleted them all. Then he clicked a new folder, Us. Inside, he created a single Word document and typed the words, New Tradition. He wasn't sure what that meant yet, but he was sure of one thing: he wouldn't let this chapter end with a betrayal. Later that week, a knock came at the door. Noah peeked through the window and turned to his father. It's that detective lady. Elliot sighed, smoothed down his shirt, and opened the door. Detective Reva Langley stood on the porch in a leather jacket, a notepad in hand. She had the kind of presence that suggested she'd seen the ugliest parts of people and still managed to treat them kindly. Mr. Quinn, she said with a nod, I wanted to speak in person. Of course, Elliot said. Come in. She stepped inside, glancing briefly at Noah before settling onto the couch. We found her, she said simply. Marla was apprehended in a small town just over the border. She had fake IDs, 2 burner phones, and $5,000 in cash. Elliot sat down, slowly processing that. Will she be charged? Reva nodded. We have enough to pursue fraud, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and endangerment. Possibly more. She'll be held without bail. Noah stood by the staircase, quietly listening. Detective Langley looked over at him. You were very brave, Noah. What you did wasn't just courageous, it was rare. Most adults wouldn't have spoken up. Noah gave a small nod, then slipped upstairs. He'd heard what he needed. After Reva left, Elliot found his son sitting cross-legged in the hallway holding the old notebook. You still have that? Elliot asked. Noah looked up. I want to keep it, just in case I forget that I'm not crazy. Elliot crouched down beside him. You're not crazy. You were right, and I'll never forget it. They sat there for a while, the quiet between them no longer something to fear. The following Saturday, Elliot took Noah out of town. No fancy plans, just a day trip to the old beach where they used to go when his mother was alive. The sand was cool and clean. The tide whispered against the shore like it was trying not to wake them. They didn't talk much at first. They just walked. Halfway down the stretch of empty beach, Elliot stopped and turned to his son. I think we should start doing this every year, he said. Coming here, Noah asked. No, starting something new. Together. Every year on this week. Noah squinted into the sun. What should we call it? Elliot looked out at the sea. How about the week we walked away? Noah smiled. I like that. And so they sat side by side building castles out of wet sand and letting the tide take what it wanted. The past wasn't gone. It wasn't forgotten. But it no longer ruled them. Because the truth had been told. Because a little boy had stood up at the altar and shattered a lie with love. And that, as Elliot knew now, was the beginning of something worth building again. By the third week after the wedding, that wasn't the phone had stopped ringing so much. Family had said their shocked apologies friends had sent over casseroles with long notes of, if you ever need anything, and the news had slowly faded from whispers to memory. But there were still ripples. Some came in the form of headlines, small unassuming articles, local woman arrested in insurance fraud plot involving Fiancée. Others came in the form of people who didn't know what to say when they saw Elliot at the grocery store. They'd offer a tight smile, sometimes with a hand on the shoulder, but mostly they looked away because they didn't know how to talk about what it meant when trust was betrayed by someone you loved. Noah noticed it too. Why do people act like it happened to them? He asked one afternoon while they were out walking the neighborhood trail. Elliot chuckled softly, the kind that didn't quite reach the eyes. Because they're scared it could happen to them. Noah kicked a pebble into the grass. But it didn't. It happened to us. I know, Elliot said, ruffling his hair. And that's why we're stronger now. It was during one of these quiet evenings while Elliot was sitting in the garage sorting through an old box of winter gear that he found something unexpected. A sealed envelope with his name on it. The handwriting was delicate cursive Sarah's. Noah's mother. He sat down on the concrete floor, dust brushing off his jeans, and opened the envelope with trembling fingers. The letter inside wasn't long, but it cut deep, Elliot. If you're reading this, it probably means I'm not around anymore. I asked Dr. Raymond to give this to you a few years after I was gone, but knowing him, he probably forgot. That's okay. You probably weren't ready until now. There's one thing I hope you never forget. Love should never make you feel small or unsure or scared. Real love is kind, even in silence. It lifts you, it listens. Please promise me if someone ever comes into your life and they dim your light or make our son feel less than you, walk away. Even if it's hard, even if it's the loneliest thing in the world. Because Noah deserves the kind of love we promised each other he'd grow up seeing. And so do you. With all my heart, Sarah. Elliot sat there for a long time, the letter resting against his chest, tears sliding down his cheeks without resistance. He hadn't been ready until now, but Sarah had known. The next morning, Elliot did something he hadn't done in months. He wrote. For years before life swept him into insurance paperwork and deadlines, he'd written short stories, nothing published, but enough to fill notebooks. He used to write before Sarah got up, before Noah was born, in the still hours of the morning, when it felt like the world waited for him to put words on paper. That morning he started again, a story about a father and a son, about truth, about courage, about a moment at a wedding when the world turned upside down, but something stronger held it together. He didn't plan to share it, not yet. It was just for them. Noah noticed the change. You're smiling more, he said one evening. Elliot glanced up from his laptop. Yeah, Noah nodded. And you don't sigh so much when you drink coffee. That made Elliot laugh, really laugh. Maybe the coffee's just better. They grinned at each other, a shared warmth that didn't need to be explained. Later that week, Noah came home from school unusually quiet. He kicked off his shoes, dropped his backpack, and sat on the floor instead of the couch. Elliot waited, giving him space. After a few minutes, Noah looked up. One of the kids said, I made up what happened at the wedding. Said grown-ups don't do that kind of thing. Elliot's heart clenched. And what did you say? I told him. Noah said slowly that sometimes kids see more than adults do. That just because something's hard to believe doesn't mean it's not true. Elliot leaned forward, resting a hand on his son's shoulder. That's a powerful thing to say. I didn't feel powerful, Noah admitted. I felt kind of sad. That's okay, Elliot said softly. The truth is sometimes heavy, but it's still worth carrying. The days grew colder as October bled into November. They hung lights early that year, not for the holidays, but for brightness, for joy. They weren't pretending things hadn't happened. but they were choosing what came next. On a particularly crisp Saturday, Elliot drove Noah up to the cabin they used to visit when Sarah was alive. It had been closed for a few years, untouched, forgotten. But something about going back felt right. The air was pine-sweet and clean. The floor creaked under their feet. The fireplace still had old ashes in it. "Do you remember this place?" Elliot asked. Noah nodded. "Kind of. I remember making s'mores with Mom." They stood there for a moment, just breathing it in. Then Elliot said, "Let's clean it up. Make it ours again." They swept. They dusted. They laughed when a raccoon darted out from the back shed. By evening, the fire was crackling, and they were wrapped in old quilts, drinking cocoa from chipped mugs. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And when Noah drifted off to sleep on the couch, Elliot opened his laptop and typed the words Chapter 2. Not of the story he was writing, of the life they were rebuilding. Together. The frost kissed the window panes of the cabin that morning, painting silver lace across the glass as the fire's embers died into a sleepy glow. Noah still lay curled up on the couch, his breath rising and falling steadily under the quilt, his cheeks flushed with dreams. Elliot stood by the window, coffee steaming in his hands, the cold pine air seeping in through the old wooden frame. He hadn't slept much, but not out of worry. Something new had begun to settle inside him, something like peace. He glanced at the worn armchair where Sarah used to sit reading out loud to a toddler. Noah, her voice low and melodic. He could almost hear her now. And the brave knight stepped into the woods, not knowing what waited, but choosing courage anyway. Funny how grief could echo in the most tender of ways, like a whisper that reminds you you're still living. Noah stirred under the blanket. "Did you start a fire yet?" Elliot smiled and walked over, kneeling by the hearth. "Just about to. Want to help?" They built it together, carefully, quietly, like building trust again, from ash and kindling. Later that day, they drove into the nearby town for supplies, groceries, batteries, and a new flashlight, since the old one flickered like it was afraid of the dark. The town was small, one of those places where every shop had someone's name on it. Danner's Market, Cole's Hardware, Merriweather Cafe. They hadn't meant to stop at the cafe. It was just cold, and the smell of cinnamon rolls drifting onto the sidewalk was too much to ignore. Inside, it was warm and lively, but not crowded. A few families, a couple of teenagers with sketch pads, and a woman sitting alone by the window scribbling in a notebook. Elliot ordered 2 hot chocolates and some pastries, while Noah claimed a table by the window. As he waited for their order, something about the woman nearby caught his attention. It wasn't that she was striking, though she was. It was the way she moved, calm, purposeful, as if she wasn't just writing words, but uncovering them from something deeper. A memory, a wound, a dream. Their eyes met briefly. She gave a gentle, curious smile. Elliot returned it, surprised at himself. Back at the table, Noah sipped his hot chocolate and watched people pass outside. "Can we come back here tomorrow?" Elliot raised an eyebrow. "Did you already finish your cinnamon roll?" Noah grinned, cheeks full. "Almost." They stayed until the sky turned pale blue, and on their way out, Elliot glanced again at the woman with the notebook. This time she looked up first. "Beautiful day," she said softly, voice kind but reserved. "It is," Elliot replied. "Cold, but nice." She nodded, then looked at Noah. "You have a brave son." Elliot blinked. "How did you—" She offered a small shrug. "Small town, big news travels fast, and truth tends to echo in places like this." Before he could say more, she smiled again. "I'm Marin." "Elliot," he said after a breath. "And this is Noah." "Pleasure," she said. "Maybe I'll see you again." "Maybe," Elliot replied, though his heart said something different. Outside, Noah nudged him with an elbow. "You smiled like a middle schooler." Elliot laughed. "And you eat like one." They visited the cafe again the next day, and the next. Sometimes Marin was there, sometimes she wasn't. When she was, they talked about books, writing, the forest, even dreams neither had shared in years. It was never flirtatious, not really. It was careful, respectful, built with the reverence of 2 people who knew how fragile second chances could be. Marin was a teacher turned travel writer who'd returned to her hometown to care for her aging father. She had her own past, her own heartbreaks, but she never spoke of them like wounds. More like stones she carried, heavy but weathered, smooth by time. "What made you want to start writing again?" she asked him one afternoon. Elliot looked at Noah, who was building a snow fort just outside the window. "My son," She nodded thoughtfully. That's a good reason. At night in the cabin, Noah would fall asleep to the sound of Elliot typing. The fire would crackle, and outside the wind would rustle through the pine trees like they were whispering secrets. Sometimes Elliot wrote about fear, other times about love. But always he wrote about courage, the quiet kind, the kind that says, I'll try again even after everything. One night as he wrapped up another chapter, Noah stirred and mumbled, Did the night make it home? Elliot looked over, surprised. You were listening? Noah rolled over half asleep. I always do. Elliot smiled, eyes misting. Yeah, buddy, he made it home. By the end of the week, the cabin felt like a home again. The wood was stocked, the pantry was full, and the shadows that had once lingered like smoke had begun to lift. Elliot wasn't trying to forget what happened. He was learning to live through it. And slowly, steadily, he was starting to believe that maybe even after betrayal, even after heartbreak, there was still room for warmth. Still room for a story that could begin again. Especially when told by someone who'd lived it. Especially when told beside a child who had taught him how to listen. It was raining the next morning. A soft, steady drizzle that blurred the treetops and kissed the cabin's tin roof with a rhythm so soothing it felt like the forest itself was exhaling. Elliot stood at the porch's edge wrapped in his old flannel, holding a steaming mug of black coffee. He watched the drops gather and fall from the edge of the roof one by one, like the seconds ticking gently into something new. Inside, Noah was asleep, his first real sleep-in since they had arrived. No nightmares, no sudden cries in the dark. Just peace. Elliot closed his eyes. Marin hadn't been at the cafe yesterday, or the day before. He told himself it didn't matter, that the calm he was finding didn't rely on her presence. But the truth, gentle and annoying, was that he missed her. Not in the grand, sweeping way you miss someone you've lost, but in the quiet, delicate way you miss a song that once played in the background and made everything else feel a little more whole. He sipped his coffee, letting the rain blur the rest. Later that day, after the rain cleared, they drove into town to pick up some groceries. Noah insisted on carrying the basket this time, weaving between the narrow aisles like a boy on a mission. He grabbed peanut butter, apples, crackers, then paused, eyeing a row of colorful greeting cards. Do people really write these? He asked, lifting one with a glittery gold border. Elliot smiled. Sometimes. But the best ones are the ones you make yourself. Noah nodded slowly, slipping the card back into place. Then I'm gonna write my own. For you. Elliot blinked, caught off guard. For me, Noah shrugged nonchalant. You're my dad. You should get something. Elliot placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Warmth blooming in his chest. That means more than you know. Outside the store, they spotted her. Marin. She was seated at a bench just across the street, her notebook balanced on one knee, hair tied back beneath a gray beanie. She looked up and met Elliot's gaze. There was a pause, uncertain but not uncomfortable. Then she smiled. He crossed the street slowly, Noah trailing beside him, clinking a bag of oranges at his side. You disappeared, Elliot said quietly. I needed to, Marin replied. Some stories need silence to grow. He nodded. I get that. I wasn't sure if I'd see you again, she added. I wasn't sure either. Elliot admitted. Then gesturing to the empty space beside her, he asked, Mind if I sit? She shifted, offering room. Of course, Noah slid onto the bench beside her without hesitation. You should have seen my snow fort. It had 2 tunnels. Marin grinned. Did it hold up in the rain? Noah frowned dramatically. Collapsed. Tragic loss. They all laughed, genuine and soft. The kind of laughter that clears away cobwebs inside and out. Over the next hour they talked. Nothing deep, nothing heavy, just words shared like bread between old friends, movies, books. Noah's attempts at cooking, which nearly set the microwave on fire, and Marin's upcoming article on finding smallness in the world and feeling big anyway. At some point, Elliot asked the question that had lingered quietly in his mind. Why did you really come back here? Marin glanced down at her notebook, her voice thoughtful. My father passed last spring. I didn't want to stay, but I didn't want to run either. So I stayed in the house. I kept writing. And somehow this quiet little town gave me space to breathe again. Elliot's heart softened. I'm glad it did. She looked at him, really looked. And you? Why here? He took a deep breath. I wanted to protect my son, but I think I needed to protect myself too, from forgetting who I was before all the noise. And who was that? Elliot chuckled, still trying to figure that out. Marin smiled, then gently closed her notebook. Maybe figuring it out together is the point. That night, back at the cabin, Noah sat cross-legged on the floor writing in a small spiral notebook. Elliot glanced over from the armchair, curious. "What are you working on?" he asked. "A letter," Noah replied. "But it's kind of like a story." Elliot set his book aside. "Want help?" Noah shook his head. "Nope, it's just got to come from me." Elliot nodded, heart swelling. The boy who once trembled under Sophia's shadow was now building worlds with his own words. Stronger. Braver. When Noah finished, he folded the paper, slid it into an envelope, and wrote one word on the front: Dad. Later, when Elliot opened the envelope in the quiet of his room, he found a few simple lines written in a child's messy scrawl but carved from something profound. "Dear Dad, I was scared before, but I'm not anymore. Not because the bad stuff's gone, but because I know you'll listen now. And that makes all the difference. Love, Noah." Elliot pressed the letter to his chest. The silence in the room was full. Not empty, full. It was just past midnight when the wind rose through the trees like a whispering tide, low, constant, unsettled. Elliot woke to the soft rattle of the cabin's window panes, followed by the quiet shuffle of Noah's footsteps. "Dad," the boy called, his voice hesitant in the dark. Elliot sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "You okay?" Noah stood in the doorway, holding his pillow like a shield. "Can I sleep in here tonight?" "The wind sounds weird." Elliot nodded, pulling back the blanket. "Come on." Noah climbed in beside him, and they lay in silence for a moment, the only sound the wind playing its song outside. Then softly Noah spoke. "Do you think she's still out there?" Sophia. Elliot didn't answer right away. He'd asked himself that same question more times than he could count. The authorities hadn't found her. Not yet. But he also knew something deeper, something that had taken him months to accept. "She probably is," he admitted. "But she's not part of our story anymore. Not the one we're writing now." Noah shifted, curling closer. "I hope she never finds us." Elliot placed a hand on his son's back, steady and calm. "Even if she does, we'll be ready. We're not who we were before." And in the quiet that followed, the wind didn't feel so strange anymore. The next morning, the storm had passed. The sky stretched wide and blue, and the air held that rare clarity that only comes after a long, restless night. At the local diner, an old rail car refurbished with chrome counters and red stools, Elliot and Noah met Marin for breakfast. She was already there, tucked into a corner booth, with 2 steaming mugs of cocoa waiting. "Rough night?" she asked, eyeing the shadows beneath Elliot's eyes. "Just wind," he said, sliding in beside Noah. "And maybe a few ghosts." Marin raised an eyebrow. "The good kind or the bad kind?" "Both," Elliot admitted. She nodded slowly, then reached into her satchel and pulled out something unexpected. A manila envelope. "I wasn't sure when to give you this," she said, sliding it across the table. "I've been working on something, inspired by you two." Elliot hesitated, then opened the flap. Inside were the first few pages of a draft article titled, "What Courage Looks Like, a Story of a Boy, His Father, and the Day Everything Changed." His hands trembled slightly as he read the first paragraph. "We often mistake bravery for loud declarations or sweeping sacrifices. But sometimes courage wears the face of an 8-year-old boy who dares to speak the truth even when the world might not believe him." Elliot swallowed hard, glancing at Noah, who had leaned over to peek at the text. "Is that me?" Noah asked, eyes wide. Marin smiled softly. "It is." Elliot wasn't sure what moved him more, the words themselves or the quiet reverence in which they were written. It wasn't some expose. It wasn't about vengeance or scandal. It was about love, survival, truth. "You captured something I didn't even know how to say," Elliot murmured. "I just listened," Marin said. "You two did the rest." Noah sat up straighter, pride bubbling in his chest. "Will other people read it?" "Only if you say yes," Marin replied. "It's your story, Noah." The boy considered this, then slowly nodded. "I think maybe it could help other kids, ones who are scared." Elliot met Marin's gaze across the table. "Thank you." She shrugged, but her smile said more than words could carry. That afternoon they hiked again, this time not to run away from something, but to feel the earth beneath their feet, to touch the sky with their eyes, and to remind themselves that moving forward was a kind of victory. At the ridge where the wind met the edge of the lake, they stopped. Elliot turned to Noah. "Close your eyes for a second." The boy did. "Now take a deep breath." "What do you hear?" Noah listened. The breeze, a bird in the distance, the faint rustle of pine needles. Everything he whispered. Exactly, Elliot replied. Everything. And still peace. When Noah opened his eyes again, he was smiling. As they descended the trail, Elliot felt something shift inside him. A weight finally lifted, not erased, but integrated. The past wasn't something to outrun. It was something to learn from, carry with care, and eventually set down. At the cabin, Marin lingered near her car. I should head back, she said softly. Elliot glanced at Noah, who was already dozing in the back seat, his head lolling to one side. You sure, Elliot asked? You're welcome to stay. Marin hesitated, then shook her head. Not tonight, but soon. He stepped closer, their hands brushing. I'm glad you came back. So am I, she said. You know, sometimes stories write themselves, but the good ones, they start with someone brave enough to tell the truth. Elliot smiled, his eyes catching the last rays of the sun. Then maybe this is just the beginning. And as she drove off down the winding path, dust rising behind her like a promise, he believed it might be true. The rhythm of life had begun to steady again for Elliot and Noah. School days returned, filled with quiet progress and slowly rebuilt friendships. Elliot spent most mornings writing, sometimes with words, sometimes with silence, trying to make sense of everything that had happened and everything that might still come. But on a cloudy Thursday afternoon, their fragile peace cracked. Elliot had taken Noah to town after school to pick up groceries and fill up the truck. The gas station was mostly empty, save for a silver SUV parked on the far side and a teenager inside fiddling with the lotto machine. Noah sat in the passenger seat, his eyes scanning a comic book. Elliot stepped out, inserted his card, and began to fuel up. He was half listening to the hum of the pump when something made his skin prickle. A presence. Eyes. He looked up and froze. Across the lot, leaning against the silver SUV, was a man he didn't recognize. Tall, sunglasses, too still. Their eyes met, or would have if not for the glasses. Elliot didn't move. Neither did the man. But there was something in the tilt of his head, in the deliberate way he flicked away his cigarette, that screamed intent. Elliot's instincts went on high alert. He looked toward Noah, then back. The man was gone. No footsteps, no door slams, just gone. Driving home, Elliot tried to push the encounter out of his mind, but every crack in the pavement felt louder, every curve more dangerous. Dad, Noah looked up from his comic. Are you okay? Yeah, Elliot lied, just tired. But that night he sat by the window long after Noah fell asleep, staring out into the dark. The next morning, Marin called. Her voice was tight. You ever seen a guy driving a silver Pathfinder tinted windows, maybe 6'2"? Elliot's hands stiffened around the coffee mug. Yesterday. Why? She hesitated. I think someone's following me. I'm probably just being paranoid, but he was at the university lot. Then again at the co-op. Elliot stood pacing. Same guy I saw. They both went quiet. Do you think it's her? Marin finally asked. Elliot closed his eyes. I don't know, but I'm not taking chances. Later that day, Elliot picked Noah up early from school. Are we going somewhere? The boy asked, surprised. Just out of town. Overnight, Elliot said, something came up. They packed light, essentials only. As the road curved into the hills, the cabin disappeared in the rearview mirror. For the first time in weeks, Elliot's hands trembled on the wheel. They checked into a small roadside motel, one of those places with sun-faded chairs and beds that creaked like old men. That night, Elliot triple-locked the door and left the television on volume low. Noah curled up beside him, sensing the tension but saying nothing. At 2:14 a.m., Elliot jolted awake. A car door outside. He rose quietly and peered through the curtain. There it was, the silver SUV, parked 2 spaces down. Morning light revealed nothing. The vehicle was gone. No tire marks, no cameras. Marin texted, same here. He was outside my apartment last night. Didn't come in, just sat there, watching. Elliot replied, we're not safe. I'm taking Noah somewhere else. Pack a bag. Meet me where we first hiked. Noon. No arguments, just a simple, okay. By noon, they'd met in the clearing by the old lake trail. Marin's hair was pulled back, her face bare of makeup. She looked like someone prepared to vanish. I made calls, she said. I have a friend with a safe house 2 counties over. She owes me. No questions asked. Elliot nodded. Good. Noah looked between them, worry seeping into his features. Are we running again? No, Elliot said, kneeling to meet his son's eyes. We're being smart, staying one step ahead. Noah bit his lip. Do you think she sent him? I think, Elliot said slowly, some people don't like losing control. And somewhere in the distance, thunder growled. They drove in silence for miles, cutting through back roads and half-forgotten towns. At one point, they stopped at a roadside diner for food. Noah ordered pancakes and Elliot watched him eat with a strange mixture of pride and fear. His son had faced down something monstrous, and yet the world still had more shadows waiting. After they finished, Marin pointed to the parking lot. There she whispered, that truck. It wasn't the silver SUV, it was black now. But the same driver, sunglasses, still, staring straight through them. Elliot didn't hesitate. Go. Now, they bolted for the car. Noah gripping Marin's hand tightly. As they sped away, the black truck remained behind unmoving. Just watching. Waiting. It wasn't random. It wasn't coincidence. It was a message. Sophia hadn't disappeared. She was hunting. And worse, she had help. The drive to the safe house took over 4 hours, each one heavier than the last. The road wound into dense pine forests, the kind where sunlight filtered through in thin golden strands and cell service vanished like breath in winter air. Marin guided them through switchbacks and gravel trails until they reached a weathered gate. A security keypad, barely visible beneath creeping ivy, buzzed softly as she entered a code. The gate creaked open, revealing a modest stone cabin tucked between the trees, sturdy, silent, and miles from anyone who'd think to look. It was the kind of place meant to be forgotten. I used to come here with Lacey, Marin said quietly, turning off the car. Back when things were different. Elliot nodded, eyes scanning the tree line. Different is good right now. Inside the cabin was sparse but comfortable. A stone fireplace sat cold and quiet in the corner, its mantel lined with old photographs and dusty paperbacks. Noah dropped his bag beside a couch and turned to them. Will she find us here? Alicia exchanged a look with Marin before crouching beside his son. She might try, but we're not alone this time, and we're not afraid anymore. That night, they all stayed in the same room, the fire casting dancing shadows across the walls. But no one truly slept. Outside, the wind howled like a warning. The next morning, Elliot stepped out with a cup of black coffee, letting the air bite at his skin. The forest was still, but too still. He scanned the treetops, the gravel road, the slope behind the cabin. Nothing moved. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was out there. When he stepped back inside, Marin was on the phone in the kitchen, her voice low but tight. I need eyes. If someone's been following me, they're leaving a trail. Use the old back channels. Discreet. She hung up and looked at Elliot. I called in a favor. A friend from the agency. She's not supposed to help retired now, but she said she'll poke around. Elliot nodded. Good. Because I think we're not dealing with just Sophia anymore. You think it's a network? I think someone with connections helped her disappear. This isn't just some scorned lover thing anymore. She's orchestrating something. They both turned as Noah stepped into the room, his expression uneasy. I saw someone last night, through the window. Elliot froze. What did they look like? I couldn't tell. Just a shape, but I know it wasn't an animal. Marin's face hardened. We don't have time. That afternoon, Elliot found a USB drive hidden in his overnight bag. He didn't put it there. Plugging it into his laptop, he found only a single video file, no metadata, no timestamp. He played it. It opened to a dimly lit room. Sophia sat across from a man whose face was blurred. Her voice was calm, cold. They'll think they're safe, but safety is just another illusion. I gave him everything, hope, a future. Now I'm taking it back. Elliot's stomach turned. The man responded, his voice distorted. You said the boy might talk. He won't get the chance. I know how to make them disappear. The video cut out. Marin walked in as Elliot stood, his face pale. She sent us a warning, he said. No. Marin replied, jaw tight. She sent us a challenge. They spent the next hours preparing. Marin drew a rough map of the land surrounding the cabin. Elliot reinforced locks, covered the windows, made plans for escape routes. Noah sat quietly, processing everything with more maturity than any boy his age should have needed. As night fell, a storm rolled in. Rain pelted the roof. Wind shook the shutters. At 1:07 a.m., Noah screamed. Elliot burst into his room, heart pounding. Noah sat up in bed, pointing at the window. There was a face, he whispered. She was right there. Elliot ran outside with a flashlight, but there were no footprints, no broken branches, just darkness and wet leaves. When he came back in, Marin handed him a small note. It was folded, once crisp edges placed under the front door. 2 words: found you. The safe house was no longer safe. At sunrise, Marin's contact finally called back. Her voice crackled through the static. She's not working alone. There's a private intelligence firm involved. Off-the-books contracts. Surveillance asset elimination. Your name's on a file tagged unfinished business. Elliot's stomach dropped. So it's real. She's funded, protected, and she's hunting you. Marin's voice cut in. Is there a name? There was silence on the line. Then unit codename Lantern. Their job isn't to scare, it's to erase. Later that day, Marin opened a storage chest beneath the cabin floorboards. Inside were encrypted phones, burner wallets, and a small steel case. She popped it open and revealed a pistol. She met Elliot's eyes, no hesitation. If they come, we don't run. We hold our ground. Elliot nodded, together. And for the first time, Noah stood between them, not as a child clinging to safety, but as the reason they had to win. Not just survive, win. The forest pulsed with a quiet tension. By noon, the rain had cleared, but the pressure in the air remained thick and expectant, like the world was holding its breath. Elliot sat on the back porch, sharpening a knife, not because he expected to use it, but because staying still made him feel helpless. Noah was inside working on a puzzle Marin had found in a cupboard. She moved from room to room with the calm focus of someone trained to detect invisible threats. But even she couldn't mask the way her eyes lingered on the windows, or the twitch of her hand near her hip whenever a floorboard creaked. Sophia had found them, and now they waited. Elliot, Marin said from the kitchen doorway, "We need to talk." He followed her into the cabin's narrow hall where she pulled out a tablet she hadn't shown him before. On it was a satellite image zoomed into their location. Red pings blinked in a widening arc around the safe house. "Motion trigger," she said. "A perimeter I set up weeks ago. 3 were tripped this morning. Northwest, maybe a mile out. Wildlife, possibly. But then why was there a 4th ping east 20 minutes ago?" Elliot's face hardened. "They're circling. We have until nightfall. Then we stop waiting." The plan was simple: evacuate and bait. They would leave through the east exit and double back in a wide arc, drawing attention away from the cabin. Marin would remain behind, set traps, monitor movement, then vanish before anyone arrived. "We'll meet in 24 hours at the overlook by Crescent Ridge," she said. "If I'm not there by sundown, you keep going." Elliot hesitated. What if? No, what if? You have to protect Noah. That's what matters. He nodded, then hugged her unexpectedly tight. "I'm sorry I ever doubted you." Marin smiled, eyes soft. "I doubted me too." They moved fast through the woods, Elliot carrying a lightweight pack, Noah close behind. The boy said nothing, but his face had changed, more alert, less fearful. He wasn't a child in this moment. He was a survivor. They didn't speak until they reached the riverbed. Elliot crouched to check their bearings, and Noah sat on a boulder catching his breath. "Do you think she'll follow?" Noah asked. Elliot glanced up. "She's already following. Question is, can she find us before we find what she's hiding?" Noah looked at confused. "I thought we were just trying to get away." "We were," Elliot said. "But she's not just chasing us. She's covering tracks. That video wasn't about revenge. It was insurance. There's something bigger." Noah's eyes widened. "You think she's part of something?" "I think Sophia's not who we thought she was. And if she's scared enough to run surveillance on her own family, then we've only seen the tip of it." Back at the cabin, Marin moved like a ghost. She laid out tripwires made from fishing line, and Bell's set motion sensors at chest level, and rigged a shortwave jammer to scramble any GPS data sent within a 50-foot radius. As the sun dipped below the trees, she stood at the window waiting. At exactly 6:13 p.m., a branch snapped in the woods. Then silence. Then another snap closer. Marin raised the pistol and backed toward the rear escape hatch. Her breath stayed steady. Her grip didn't shake. But her heartbeat quickened when the voice came. "Marin, I know you're in there." It was calm, masculine, not Sophia. "We don't have to do this the hard way," the voice continued. "Give us the boy and the man walks." Marin didn't reply. The front window exploded inward. She dove to the floor, rolled behind the sofa, and opened fire. In the forest, Elliot and Noah heard the distant crack of gunfire. Elliot stopped, heart pounding. "She's in trouble." Noah gripped his arm. "We can't go back." "I know," Elliot said, but he couldn't move forward either. At the cabin, Marin's traps bought her 60 seconds, maybe less. Two men in tactical gear breached the front door. She hit one with a clean shot to the leg, dropped the second with a blow to the jaw, then ran. Out the rear hatch, into the trees. A breath, a sprint, a silence so sharp it rang in her ears. Then nothing. No footsteps, no shouts, just the soft mechanical whir of a drone circling overhead. She was being watched. Elliot made a call from the burner phone as soon as they reached the emergency marker. One ring, two, then go. "It's Elliot. Lantern found us. Marin's under fire." A pause, then a new voice, female, composed. "You said it was personal. It's not anymore, is it?" "No. This is bigger," coordinates. "He gave them, 'I'll be there by sunrise,'" the woman said. "And Elliot, if you're wrong, I disappear again." He nodded. "If I'm wrong, none of us will be around to regret it." Marin didn't make it to Crescent Ridge by nightfall, but she wasn't dead. She was watching them from the trees hidden under brush, bruised and bleeding but alive. One of the men from Lantern had whispered something before he passed out. Not an order, not a threat, just a question. "Do you even know what he is?" And she didn't. Not really, not yet. But as the stars blinked into the sky above her, Marin knew the truth was no longer hiding behind Sophia. It was buried inside Elliot's past. And maybe inside Noah, too. The storm had passed, but the fire was just beginning. By dawn, a convoy moved through the mountain switchbacks, 4 black SUVs with unmarked plates, engines, muffled headlights off. In the lead car sat a woman dressed in gray tactical gear, her dark braids slung over one shoulder, hands steady on her lap. Her name was Raina Halden, and until 6 months ago, she didn't exist. "Visual on Smoke Trail Northeast Ridge," her driver said. "Signal our presence. Radio silence from here out. No gunplay unless they shoot first," she ordered. Raina wasn't here on behalf of any government. She was here because Elliot Gray had once saved her life, and because his message last night had shattered something fragile she'd been trying to forget. Elliot stood by the ridge trail, wind cutting across his face, Noah at his side. They had slept in a hollow beneath a rock outcrop, kept warm by body heat and silence. Neither had spoken much. The bond between them had grown past words. When Raina appeared out of the trees, her figure, deliberate eyes locked. Noah instinctively stepped behind Elliot. "Easy," Raina said, her voice low, her hands visible. "I'm here because you told the truth. Now you need to finish it." Elliot nodded once. "Marin didn't make the meeting. She's alive, I think. But they're closing in." "Then we draw them out," Raina said. "But first you and I need to talk. Alone." Noah looked up, worried. Elliot gave him a small nod. "Stay in the clearing. Don't move." They walked 20 yards down a mossy path, the air damp and quiet. "You said Lantern breached the cabin," Raina began. "They did. Marin took down 2, but there were more. And Sophia's not just a rogue operator anymore." Raina studied him. "You think she's linked to the Ash Ledger?" Elliot's jaw tightened. The Ash Ledger. It was supposed to be a myth, an encrypted black dossier passed between global intelligence factions containing information that could collapse corporations, governments, entire regions. Elliot had heard whispers during his last assignment in Prague. One name always appeared in proximity to the ledger: Salandra Knox, a ghost operative turned mercenary strategist. "What if I told you Sophia wasn't her real name?" Raina asked. Elliot blinked. "Go on." Her birth name was Lyra Knox, Salandra's sister. The revelation hit like a punch to the ribs. Lyra had married into the Ledger's chain of custody, targeting men with access, gaining power through proximity. James Hollard had just been her latest pawn. Elliot realized with horror he and Noah weren't just witnesses, they were keys to the next stage. And Sophia, no Lyra. She wouldn't stop until she had both. Meanwhile, Marin crouched behind a rotted tree stump half a mile west, watching lanterns sweep the woods in wide, calculated arcs. She had one objective now: delay. Her leg ached from where a bullet had grazed her thigh. Her knife was gone. She had only a flare and a 2-shot pistol. But her mind was sharp. As one operative passed near, she stood without hesitation and lobbed a stone in the opposite direction. He turned, she moved. Quick, silent blood leaving dots behind her on the undergrowth. She reached an old ranger's shelter and climbed onto the roof, watching from above. Sophia No Lara stood near the center of the clearing. Her white parka made her glow like a ghost. We find the boy Lyra was saying into a satellite mic. We crack the signature. I don't care how. The father's a relic. The kid is the cipher. Marin inhaled sharply. Cipher. So that was it. Noah wasn't just the witness. He was the vault. Back at Crescent Ridge, Elliot stood rigid. Raina had laid it out clean. Lyra Knox had infiltrated their lives under Lantern's directive. But the true prize wasn't revenge. It was the decoding of a biological key hidden in Noah's genetics. Something passed down from James's research. You remember when James disappeared in Jakarta for 5 days, Raina asked. Yeah, Elliot said slowly. He said it was a medical emergency. Raina shook her head. He wasn't sick. He was being used. Blood tests, memory scans, in one extraction. A prototype implant encrypted organic. Elliot stared at her. And now they think Noah carries it. Not think, she said grimly. They know. Noah, sitting on the rocks, stared at the small bird, hopping near his foot. For a moment, everything felt normal, like a school camping trip. He picked up a stick and scratched a shape into the dirt. Then he heard something. A breath. A footfall. He turned and a figure stepped from the woods. Lyra. Her hair tied back, a soft smile on her face, no weapons drawn. Noah, she said gently, I've been looking everywhere for you. He froze. She stood bending closer, his hands out. I know you're scared, but I need you to come with me. Your father's hurt. He needs help. Noah shook his head. You're lying, she knelt. Sweetheart, I loved your father. I still do. This whole thing got out of control. I didn't want this to happen. Noah glanced toward the trees, silently willing Elliot to appear. Then he made a choice. He stood tall, eyes steady. You hurt my dad. You lied to me. I'm not going with you. Lyra's face changed, cold, calculating. Then I don't need you to come willingly. She reached for her belt, but before her hand closed on anything, a red beam flared in the woods. A flare. Marin. Lyra turned just as a shot rang out. Not from the trees, from above. Raina stood atop the ridge, rifle raised. Step away from the boy. Lyra cursed and ducked behind a boulder. Elliot burst from the underbrush, gun drawn, grabbing Noah and pulling him down into cover. You okay? He whispered, breathless. Noah nodded, clutching his shirt. I knew you'd come. As gunfire echoed through the trees and Lyra's men retreated in chaos, the truth burned brighter than ever. Noah was more than a child. He was a target, a key, and possibly a weapon no one yet understood. But for now, he was safe. For now, by nightfall, Crescent Ridge was quiet again, scarred, scorched in places, but breathing. Raina's team had set up a temporary perimeter using thermal drones and silent sentries camouflaged within the woods. Noah slept soundly in a makeshift tent curled beneath Elliot's jacket, unaware of the war still moving around him. But for the adults who remained awake, rest was not an option. Inside a weather-worn ranger's cabin, lit only by a dim camping lantern, Elliot, Marin, and Raina hovered around a creaky wooden table. A folded map lay between them, marked with red ink and coded notes. Marin leaned against the wall, her leg freshly bandaged. Lyra's after something more than revenge or money. It's not just about Noah, she's after whatever James hid before he died. Raina nodded. He called it the Vault Project. It was never fully explained, even in the agency's redacted files. But we know this James's research into biometric encryption could be used to hide entire archives of intelligence inside human DNA. Elliot's eyes narrowed, and he used his own son as the template. Noah doesn't know, Marin added quickly. He couldn't. He's too young to understand. Elliot turned away, jaw clenched. Then we have to make sure no one ever gets the chance to use him. Raina hesitated. There's one problem. Elliot looked back at her, already bracing. The key is incomplete. Without the primary seed, James's core code, Noah's data map, is just fragments, like a broken password missing half its characters. Elliot blinked. So the vault is still locked. Yes, Raina confirmed. But Lyra thinks she can finish what James started, or worse, force Noah into completing it. Silence thickened the air. Marin finally stepped forward, placing a small, leather-bound journal on the table. Before the cabin burned, I grabbed this. She opened it, revealing James's cramped handwriting and diagrams that looked more like musical scores than code. Elliot frowned. That's not encryption. No, Raina said slowly, tilting the book toward the light. It's resonance mapping. She tapped one-page drawings of sound wave patterns wrapped in DNA helixes. James didn't just use genetic coding. He used audio imprinting, voice prints tones, maybe even emotion-linked resonance frequencies. The vault doesn't unlock with a password. It opens with a memory. Elliot stared. Noah's memory. Back in the tent, Noah stirred. His dreams were not of fire or fear, but something stranger, warm light, humming vibrations, and a melody that felt familiar, like the song his mother used to sing when he had trouble sleeping. He mumbled the tune in his sleep, unaware that just outside Raina's ears perked, that she whispered standing. Did you hear that? Elliot moved fast, slipping into the tent and kneeling beside his son. Noah, it's okay, buddy. You're safe. But Noah's eyes remained shut, his lips moving. Raina leaned in, holding out a small sonic scanner. It vibrated gently as Noah hummed aligning waveforms in real time. Oh my God, she whispered. It's him. That's the resonance key. They watched, awed and horrified, as lines of data began to build on her screen. It wasn't complete, but it was real. Elliot turned to Raina. If that tune unlocks the vault, what happens when Lyra hears it? She won't just unlock it, Raina replied grimly. She'll weaponize it. By dawn, they were moving again, Raina's convoy taking the mountain roads west deeper into national park territory. The vault was rumored to be hidden in an abandoned observatory, once run as a joint private military lab. If it existed, it would be buried beneath layers of dead tech and silence. Noah sat beside Elliot in the SUV's backseat, earbuds, in listening to music but still humming that haunting tune beneath his breath. Elliot couldn't stop watching him, his son, his heartbeat, his code. Noah finally looked up. Are we going somewhere dangerous again? Elliot hesitated. A little. Am I the reason we're being chased? Elliot turned fully to face him. No, you're the reason we're fighting back. Noah blinked. Because of what's inside me. No, Elliot said, voice tight. Because of who you are. When they reached the observatory, it looked like a crumbled memory. Ivy-covered stone walls, shattered domes, and rusted satellite dishes that pointed nowhere. But beneath it, there was life. Raina led them through a collapsed corridor and down a sealed staircase where a biometric door waited scorched dormant and still intact. They gathered around it. It needs voice verification, Raina said, reading the ancient interface. And blood, Elliot turned to Noah. You don't have to do this, he whispered. But Noah nodded. I want to. A single drop of blood, a single whispered melody. The door clicked once, then opened. A corridor of soft blue lights unfolded before them. The vault. But as they stepped inside, a blast echoed from behind them. Smoke, shouts. They turned and saw Lyra at the stairwell, flanked by lantern operatives, her face wild with triumph. Thank you for unlocking the door, she called down. Now step aside. Elliot moved in front of Noah. Raina raised her rifle, but Noah surprised them all. He stepped forward. I'm not afraid of you anymore, he said, voice clear, and I won't help you. Lyra tilted her head. Then I'll take what I need from your memory, with or without consent. Another gunshot cracked the air, then silence. Lyra dropped to one knee, blood blooming from her shoulder. Marin appeared behind her, pistol raised. You forgot, she said coldly. I taught you how to shoot. Lyra fell, the operatives retreated, and inside the vault the lights began to hum, reacting not to violence but to Noah's voice, to the truth, to memory. The vault had awakened, and so had the legacy James left behind. Not a weapon, a warning, a second chance. The silence after the last gunshot lingered in the air like a held breath. Noah's hand was still slightly outstretched, trembling not from fear, but from something deeper, something older. It wasn't just adrenaline that pulsed through his fingers. It was memory. Behind him, the vault's curved chamber buzzed with blue energy. Streams of light pulsed through fiber-lined walls like arteries in a beating heart. Symbols flickered along transparent panels, a language not of machines but of emotion, of connection. Marin stepped over Lyra's collapsed body without a word. Her pistol hung low, but her eyes never left the stairwell. Raina and Elliot quickly cleared the space, dragging Lyra out and binding her with industrial cable ties before she regained consciousness. Lantern operatives had retreated, but Raina knew that wouldn't last long. We need to finish this, she said, her voice sharp but controlled. Elliot crouched beside Noah. You okay? Noah didn't answer right away. His gaze was fixed on the humming walls, eyes wide, as if they were drawing something out of him. He finally whispered, I remember. Elliot's heart sank. Remember what the last night I saw, Mom? Those words hit like stone. No one spoke. Noah's voice cracked as he continued. She and Dad were arguing, not loud, but she cried. I snuck out of bed to listen. I heard Dad say, we don't have time to run, Clara. It's already inside him. Raina froze. Clara, she asked. Your mom's name was Clara. Noah nodded. Marin inhaled sharply. Clara Wolf. She used to work in sound cognition labs at Evergreen. She was brilliant. Vanished after whistleblowing about a classified human interface project. I thought she disappeared. She didn't, Noah said. She died protecting me. Elliot stood slowly. That's why James had to hide you. Not just from Lantern, from everyone. Suddenly, a tone rippled through the vault chamber, clear and rising in pitch. The floor trembled beneath their feet. On the far side, a circular panel unfurled from the wall, revealing a sunken console. Noah stepped toward it, drawn by something none of them could see. Raina's scanner vibrated again. It's syncing with him. His resonance is being read as an access key. Marin approached the console. It's waiting for a response. Noah placed his hand on the glass. A beam of light scanned upward. The room grew warmer, calmer, as if the vault could feel intention. Then the console flickered and a projection came to life. A man's face. James Wolfe. Noah's father. The projection was grainy, more memory than video, but his voice was crystal clear. If you're seeing this, he began, then the safeguards have failed, which means my son has awakened the vault, and the truth can no longer be buried. Elliot closed his eyes. He hadn't heard James's voice in nearly a decade, but it felt like yesterday. James continued, to the agents who find this, I built the vault not as a weapon, but as a failsafe. Lantern sought to manipulate biometric emotion mapping to control populations' decisions, even memories. I stole the core code and encoded it into my son. Not because I wanted him to carry this, but because I had no choice. The projection wavered. Clara and I knew the cost. We knew we might not survive. But Noah, if you're listening, you are the bridge between what we were and what we could become. You don't need to be a soldier or a spy. Just be you. That's enough. Then softer, protect the light, son. Even beneath the ashes, it still shines. The projection faded, and silence returned. Noah stood motionless, tears streaming down his face. Elliot stepped forward, kneeling beside him. You don't have to do anything else today. You've done enough. Noah shook his head slowly. No, I want to finish what he started. Raina and Marin exchanged glances. If the vault can be extracted, Raina said we could distribute its contents to open source archives. Prevent Lantern or anyone from locking it down again. But it needs a release key, Marin added. A voice. His voice. Noah stepped toward the central panel. He looked at Elliot. Sing it with me. Elliot blinked. What? The lullaby, Noah whispered. Mom's song. You used to hum it too. Elliot choked on a laugh. I was tone deaf, Noah smiled. You still are. And together, father and son began to hum. It wasn't perfect. Notes wavered. Timing slipped. But it was real. It was them. The vault responded not with alarms, but with warmth. Blue light turned gold. Panels slid open. Data streams poured upward like fireflies rising into the sky. A quiet chime sounded. Access complete. Protocol released. Raina stared at her device. It's out. The vault is broadcasting. Marin whispered, we did it. Outside, sirens howled in the distance. Lantern had regrouped. But Raina simply nodded. Let them come. The truth is no longer theirs to bury. As the team gathered their gear ready to defend what they'd unleashed. Elliot took Noah's hand. You okay, he asked again. Noah nodded. For the first time? Yeah, Elliot smiled. Then gripping his son's hand tightly, they turned toward the light. The wind outside carried sirens like cries through the trees, shrill rising and everywhere. The sun had barely begun to lower on the horizon, but in the clearing outside the vault, Lantern's forces were already moving in formation. Raina crouched behind a fallen tree near the perimeter, her rifle-steady eyes flicking between a thermal tablet and the path where dust now kicked up from armored boots. 4 squads, she murmured into her comms. No heavy vehicles yet, but they'll come. Inside the vault, the golden light had faded into a soft glow, the system now dormant after its knowledge had been dispersed. Streams of encoded data, millions of files, memories, recordings, had already uploaded across decentralized nodes that Marin and Reyna triggered simultaneously, ensuring Lantern could never erase or contain them again. But Lantern didn't know that yet. They were coming to take it all back. Noah watched from the archway, his shoulders squared despite the fear in his eyes. Elliot stood beside him, shielding him partly with his body instinctually. "What do we do now?" Noah asked. Elliot scanned the clearing. "We hold, just long enough to get you out." "I'm not leaving," Noah said firmly. Elliot turned to face him. "Noah, no. I'm not running again. This is where it ends for me. You're just a kid." Noah's voice broke slightly, but he lifted his chin. "I stopped being just a kid the moment she put a gun in your face and you told her you were proud of me anyway." That silenced Elliot. Behind them, Marin handed Reyna a device the size of a matchbox. "Here," she said, "I programmed this to trigger a flare pulse. Non-lethal, scrambles, short-range comms, and night vision." Reyna smirked. "You know what I love about you, Marin? You only get romantic when bullets are flying." Marin cracked half a smile. "There's beauty in urgency." The first of Lantern's agents appeared at the clearing's edge, dark uniforms, visors, silent steps. They didn't shout, didn't warn, just raised their weapons like a shadow descending. Reyna clicked the side of the matchbox. A pulse of violet light flashed across the clearing. Lantern's front line faltered, staggering, some falling shields shorting out. Now Reyna roared, springing forward with calculated precision. Marin followed, moving like a phantom, her stun baton striking with shocking accuracy. The Lantern agents, briefly blinded, tried to regroup, but the element of surprise was theirs now. Inside the vault, Elliot turned to Noah. "If they breach, they'll try to take you alive. You're the key. Don't let them. What if I can't stop them?" "You won't be alone." Elliot reached down and pulled a worn flash drive from his vest pocket. "This has her voice. Your mother's. It's what she used to override the last fail-safe one she never told James about. If they try to use you to rebuild the vault, this shuts it all down. For good." Noah took the drive slowly, his fingers trembling. "I miss her," he whispered. "I do too." They didn't hug. No time. But the look they shared said everything. Outside, the battle raged. Reyna and Marin worked like twin storms. Marin incapacitating Reyna, covering her flank, never straying more than a few feet apart. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. But Lantern was vast. One by one, more agents poured in. "Back," Reyna shouted. "Fall back to the vault." They darted behind cover, firing short bursts to slow their pursuers. The clearing was a mess of scorched earth, collapsed equipment, and smoke. Suddenly, Reyna cried out, falling to one knee. A shot grazed her thigh. Marin screamed a guttural, terrifying sound and charged the agent who fired. He didn't last 3 seconds. Reyna waved her off. "I'm fine, just help me stand." Marin hauled her up. "You're getting a lecture for this." "Later," Reyna hissed. They stumbled into the vault entrance just as the inner doors began to seal. Elliot was already ushering Noah into the secondary shaft, an old mining corridor that tunneled beneath the mountain. Their exit plan. "Where's the detonator?" Reyna asked breathlessly. "Here," Marin said, pulling it from her jacket. Reyna stared at her. "You're staying, we both are." "No, you're not. You're going with them." "Noah needs you," Marin said gently. "But the vault, it still has relay cores. If we let Lantern near it again, they'll trace the pulse back. We finish this." They held each other's gaze. A goodbye without words. Reyna handed her sidearm to Marin. "Make it count." Marin nodded. Elliot pulled Noah close. "Time to move, buddy." Noah hesitated. Then he ran into the tunnel. Reyna turned once more to the entrance. Lantern agents were breaking through the final outer barricade. She could hear their footsteps, the barking of commands. "I love you," she said, glancing at Marin. "Forever," Marin replied. The last inner door sealed. Inside the dark tunnel, Noah whispered, "Will they make it out?" Elliot didn't lie. "I don't know." Noah gripped the flash drive tighter. As they followed the faint glow of emergency lights deeper into the shaft behind them, a low hum began to rise, a final charge building in the vault's failing heart. Marin stood tall beside the core panel. She closed her eyes and pressed the button. The explosion echoed like thunder trapped in the bones of the mountain. Noah and Elliot stumbled as a gust of heat and dust surged through the escape shaft, followed by a sudden awful silence. The kind of silence that meant something was gone irrevocably. Elliot caught Noah's shoulder before he fell, but the boy's face had already crumpled, and when he sank to his knees, it wasn't from the blast. It was grief. They're not coming, Noah whispered. Elliot didn't answer. He knelt beside him, wrapping one arm around Noah's back, the other around his own knees, as if trying to hold the world together. Somewhere above them, the vault had collapsed. The data was gone, dispersed. The core obliterated. Lantern's men would find only ruin. But at what cost? They sat in the tunnel for a long time, breathing the ash-laced air. Neither moved, neither spoke. Eventually, the emergency lights flickered, leading them onward. Weeks passed. The world above shifted again. Lantern's grip loosened, not shattered, but shaken. Without the vault's secrets, its leverage crumbled. Whistleblowers emerged. Hidden truths flooded public forums. Reyna's and Marin's upload had done more than preserve memory, it had sparked awakening. One morning under a gentler sky, Elliot and Noah stood beside two simple stones in a grove outside an old hilltop chapel. They bore no names, only symbols carved deep in the stone, a lantern and a violet flame. They said we could add words later. Noah said softly. Elliot smiled faintly. They don't need them. Wind moved through the trees, quiet and warm. For the first time in weeks, the world didn't feel like it might break. Noah held out his hand. Elliot took it. 3 years later, in a renovated classroom at the edge of a bustling city, a boy with a quiet voice and a sharp gaze clicked through a hologram slideshow. Behind him, diagrams showed the structure of civil resistance movements, ancient to modern. This one, he said, pointing to a faded photo of Marin and Reyna, wasn't just about rebellion. It was about love. They didn't want to burn the system down. They wanted to save the people inside it. A pause, even if it meant giving up everything. The room was silent. Then a girl in the back raised her hand. Do you think it was worth it? Noah blinked, the weight of her question hanging in the air. For a moment, he was back in that tunnel, the dust, the heat, the silence. Then he nodded. I do. That night, he visited the grove alone. The grass was taller, the stones untouched. He crouched, brushing leaves aside, and placed something between them, a flash drive sealed in crystal, glowing faintly violet. I kept my promise, he whispered. It's safe. Noah stood, breathing deep. As he turned to leave, something in the wind shifted. Not a voice, but a presence. The kind that wraps around your heart without touching your skin. That tells you you're not alone. He smiled through his tears and walked toward the city lights. This story reminds us that no matter how deeply the truth is hidden behind polished lies, behind smiling faces, it will find a way to surface. Sometimes it takes the innocence of a child or the courage of the brokenhearted to unlock it, but once released, the truth has the power to set generations free.